Hey folks, this is Ben Gessel. How's it going? I know I haven't made a video here in a few days, but I am making this one at least now. Um, there's a few things I want to talk about here. This is probably going to be more of a general thing. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, I just had a birthday. Spent it with my family, a few other folks recently, and it was fun. We'll be dog sitting here shortly, next up until Monday, Tuesday, around there, and that'll be also very fun. Um, I think we're in Washington, by the way, past the point of it being snow and darkness for most of the day and of course the night, with only some sunlight barely peeking through the white clouds, the white sky, for like a handful of hours a day. I think we're past that point. I think we're now in the point where you see on some days it's a bit more blue, but it's still very much in the, I'd say, high 30s to 40s, not quite 50s yet. But it's, Washington, by the way, Western Washington, I'm talking about Western Washington here. Western Washington is the sort of place where you kind of need to be okay with the clouds. You need to be okay with drizzly, just the drizzles, light rain, and also cold rain, and also, just a lot of rain. You need to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with overcast weather and 50s to 60s weather for the most part, you're going to want to head elsewhere. Eastern Washington, for instance, all the way over to Maine. I mean, at this latitude, where we're close to 49th parallel. I mean, we're probably sitting around the, not quite. I'm not sure how it goes. It's not quite 45, but it's in the high 40s where we're at. Somewhere in there, mid to high 40s. At this latitude, unless you're talking about Europe is different. But east of the Cascades, all the way over to the Atlantic Ocean, at this latitude, it is cold. It is cold in the winter, and in the summer, it's a little bit toastier actually. But it overall is a lot more continental climate. The rest of the North America, except for here, even the Atlantic coast is more four seasons definitely than here, because the Gulf Stream goes toward Europe. It doesn't go toward the East Coast. It goes toward Europe. So the West Coast, like Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, those three areas: British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and maybe a little bit of Juneau, part of Alaska. It's a lot like Western Europe, but more Northwest Europe. So, I mean, if you're Scottish, English, Welsh, Irish, and you like that weather, a lot of Irish and other folks like the warmer weather, of course, too. But if you're from the British Isles, you're from Norway, Denmark, kind of, but also France, northern France, and maybe Holland, Belgium, maybe Western Germany, maybe at least Northwest Germany. If you're from any of those areas and you come to the United States, you're probably going to like the Northwest. If you like that oceanic climate, cooler oceanic climate. I mean, if you're, I'd say Southern Italian, Greece, whatever, Turkey, Southern Spain, especially Portugal, and Southern France, and maybe the warmer Balkans somewhat, you're probably going to want to move someplace that's a bit more, not quite as cloudy, not quite as rainy and cold sometimes. But anyway, aside from all that, let's see, what else is happening? Well, I'm trying to write some more music, and it's going pretty well. It's just Um, maybe on some level, I'm just kind of emotionally processing some stuff and about a lot of things, and it'll translate to music here. I have a lot of. I don't have to do a lot of. I'm not distracted by a lot of stuff. I can just get a lot of writing done. And I have to still keep dealing with these frequent reschedules for lessons. You think that parents, when they sign up for lessons with a teacher, they start taking lessons with a teacher, and they double and triple check their schedules, especially about sports. And I'm still dealing with parents and these after school activities in sports. I'm still dealing with this stuff after giving them my my studio policies. If this is, again, if I have to tell the parent, if this is going to be an issue, if we have to keep rescheduling every other lesson, because you don't know when your practice is going to be, I have to discontinue lessons. I can't teach that way. But it's just, you guys, it's just so unbelievably frustrating. I've had dealt with this for years now. Years. And it still keeps happening. I try to make sure that my schedule is such where I don't have to impose on other people to reschedule what they're doing. I tried my best to do that. Sorry about the phone call. But, it's like, what I'm going to do is, no, that's right. So, it's just really annoying, folks. I mean, especially this phone call. It's very annoying. It's probably my landlord's, anyways, whatever. So, well, let's see what else is going on here. I do apologize about the phone call again. It'll go away in a second. Yeah, I just feel like, with time, people keep expecting more and more of your time. It's like you just can't. I mean, if I was married and had a family, oh my gosh, forget it. I mean, like, there's a lot of things I would not be able to do. I'd probably have to change a lot of stuff. Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it goes. A lot of people want to come to the United States to live. And I suppose this is more the case when it comes to any of the following areas. Basically anywhere south of the United States, for the most part, except for maybe Argentina, Chile, those places, Uruguay. Those three countries, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, they're pretty, or Uruguay, sorry. The G is kind of more of a W thing going on, I know. So aside from Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay, the rest of Latin America, yeah, or whatever, Hispanic countries, well, they want to come up here. A lot of people. It's also the same deal with Africa and much of, I'd say the Middle East, kind of. It's more Europe for the Middle East and North Africa where they want to go, if they're not so happy. And then Asia also kind of, and India as well. But with Asia, that's another ball. That's a whole other situation. So, but a lot of people want to come to the United States, I think, because we have a higher standard of living, but we also, everything's more expensive here and everything's more complicated. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, there's a family I taught their kids piano lessons, and the mom from Eritrea, which is northeast of basically North Sudan, or it's on the coast of the Red Sea. And I really hadn't known too much about this country until I met these folks. I knew some general things. I knew where it was located. But they mentioned, they were excited to be here when they first got here, but then they realized how complicated everything was in the tax system and buying a house and or whatever, mortgages and car, whatever. And I mean, credit cards. And it was a lot more arduous than they thought it would be. The great thing is that they're here. So, I mean, like, if people didn't come to the United States, if people just stayed in their countries, even if they were poor countries, we would not know as much about these countries. We wouldn't know about them. So it's good that they're here. It's just that it's harder. A lot of things that they didn't expect would be harder are harder. And then I tell my parents sometimes, gosh, I would love to go to any nation in Latin America or a lot of other places in the world. Doesn't really matter. Just get away from the United States for a while. Or something. It could be a poor country. Parents keep saying, "Oh, it would be not good. You have to." I realize there are countries where you actually have issues with clean water and just finding water, and to begin with, I realize that there are places that have it that tough. But I'm not talking about going to live maybe at one of those places. I'm talking about maybe a country where the standard of living isn't all that much lower than the U.S. It's just life is simpler. And I really, I would love to say that I'm talking about Europe, but I'm not. I've heard that Europe is, for the most part, pretty similar, but different to the United States. Oh, Europeans would say, no, 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 it's different. No, 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 no. I know. The funny thing is, it doesn't really matter for the most part, it doesn't really matter what country you're talking about with Western Europe or Central Europe. I know England is different, and I'm sure Europeans can give you guys a better understanding of what I'm talking about than what I'm saying right now. But what I'm trying to say is that, at least for a lot of Europe, it's a bit more like they tax you a heck of a lot, but then you get a lot back in services, plus their education's better. This is pretty clear to me. It's, in Germany and Scandinavia and stuff, you get taxed a bit. But the schools are amazing. And Finland, I've heard amazing things about Finland that way. Britain is a little different. I don't know. I'm not sure. Britain's kind of like half. It's like partly in the USA thing, partly in the European thing. And then, I don't know. I'm still learning about Southern Europe in some respects in this regard more. But I imagine in Southern Europe, it's probably a little different as well. But at least when it comes to France and Holland and Belgium and Germany and Sweden and Denmark and Norway, you're well taken care of, but you also end up spending a bit, in taxes for this stuff. Now, I imagine in taxes. So it's in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, Poland, Czech Republic. I've heard that maybe it's not as bad that way, but maybe you don't get as great services back. However, the upside is that Central Europe, I guess you'd say Central Eastern Europe, the way that things are just in those countries is, as far as I know, more to my liking. Well, at least what I'm trying to say is that from a cultural standpoint, they do seem like they're a bit more still older-fashioned, more conservative, so to speak. Not conservative in political sense necessarily, but more conservative in the cultural sense. Whereas Germany and Holland and Sweden and stuff, they're, I would say sometimes, at least right now, more liberal, so to speak, culturally. But I've also heard other things about those countries, more Germany and Sweden to a lesser extent, where there's kind of a backlash going on, and there's more of a more conservative thing going on as well. But that's a different deal. I just know that Europe is kind of a little bit different depending on which country you go to, but it is more socialistic than the United States still. However, in the United States, we still have a lot of messed up stuff. I wasn't an adult in the 80s, but I remember during the Reagan era, the idea was, I think, lower taxes and more money for each person meant that they had more spending power, which could drive the economy forward more. But then, Democrats and things like to kind of, whatever. But it was a different situation where, I don't know, but some people say it doesn't really matter so much who's in office, but I didn't want to get into politics anyway. But I think what I'm trying to say is that the United States has always been a tad different. And I've heard that we have an amazing healthcare system, for instance. It's just that, you hear all kinds of things. Everything that someone says that's good about the United States, there's always something on, the negative side. But, a lot of people talk about how the healthcare system in the United States is better than in Canada. And Canada is also one of the countries that a lot of people want to move to. And everybody was fretting about when Trump was elected, I'm going to move to Canada. I think that in some respects that whole thing was overblown. But I just don't know. I've always been uneasy about Trump, but again, I wasn't meaning to talk about politics in this video, so I do apologize. I'm just trying to talk about healthcare here. All I know is that I hated Obamacare. I don't like it at all, and I just want to, spend what I just spend money on, and not spend money on other people that are wasting my money, like the government, like the U.S. government. And so that's what how a lot of people feel anyway, whether or not they're conservative or liberal. That nobody wants to give away their money. It's like, especially forcibly. Nobody. I feel like sometimes when I'm paying taxes, I'm being forcibly. People kind of put my arm behind my back and say, if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, aside from all that, yeah, I have very little tolerance for putting up with other people's whatever. But the thing is that I've been very, very flexible a private teacher. I've been more flexible than the vast majority of teachers. So I mean, like, if I can't do something, I can't do something, and if something's not going to work, it's not going to work. And people have to understand that. And I'll get other students, and it is what it is. If your kid is involved, if a kid is involved with 10 different sports, how the devil can he possibly devote any time to music? So it's like, yeah, and it's just but because I'm a fellow human being, and because I make mistakes, and because I try to be the nice guy and accommodating, I try to make it work for the people. And I also try not to ever get upset with parents. All those things. I try to be very professional. Always. It's just a hard deal. It's a very hard deal, folks. A lot of you guys have 9 to 5 jobs, and your bosses are far less understanding than I ever am to parents. I understand that. And if you're not at work, or you're going out so many sick days, or there's these very clear policies set in stone. But because these clear policies, they're fair, supposedly, but that if you, for whatever reason, something comes up, your car breaks down, you have a flat tire, you're sick, but you're like calling in at the very last moment, you can't go to work. There's a lot of things that make a lot of work hard, stressful. I get that. I've been in retail. I know what that's like. I haven't really had an office job, but I've had retail jobs like that, where you have to be there or whatever. And they stink sometimes. It's important that you realize on some level, even if you worked had a job for a while and you have good income, it's important you realize that your job stinks, or that you have some kind of realization of that. You try to have a really good attitude, you're a good worker. And if I know there's a hornist I play. Look at a French horn player I play an orchestra with, and she's worked the devil out of her. I mean, she works insanely hard, and she deals with a lot of stress. And this is one of the main things I hear about from her is all the stress at work, and it's not really all that vexing to me. I mean, I do hear the angst, but again, it's one of the things. I'm like, we're good friends, and I never minded. In fact, I kind of like to hear, her feelings about this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, she deals with a lot of crud. She gets paid well. We keep telling her that it's time for a new job. Your employer doesn't value you. Her employer doesn't. Yeah, she's not valued as an employee if she's considering what she's had to deal with. But how do you know as an employee when that happens? You don't. Sometimes it takes another person to tell you when an employer is taking advantage of you or when you're being treated like crud. Sometimes, and this is just the case for a lot of things. Sometimes it takes someone else to look at your life, look at your career, and say, something isn't quite right here. And then you have to be the one to say, oh heck, or be humble. It's not always a question of humility. It's a question of courage. It's a question of stepping out there a little bit again and looking for a different job or whatever. It takes a lot of guts depending on how you do it. But that's something I know is a very real thing in this life, in this world. It's great when you have a job you can have the rest of your life. It really is. Or that you can, yeah. But a lot of things happen. The main thing is, of all people, I know Mel Brooks. I know he's kind of a wild man, funny guy. And Hollywood, he's, whatever, he's made some off-color but funny movies. Anyway, so Mel Brooks says, I think I'm going to butcher his quote, but it's like, he says, like, if you eat your oatmeal and your green vegetable, something like that, if you eat your oatmeal and a few other things, life will turn out fine. Or you also hear the phrase, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's very true. You can go through a lot of crap, and a lot of things that could be your fault. A lot of sins, moral sins, are debatably all kinds of stuff, and you're still going to be okay. And sometimes people act like something is so unforgivable that you'll never have another job again, or you'll never be able to look at your friends in the eye again. You're irredeemable, right? Some people they act this way, socially, or they cut you off from their life. That happens a lot. And the funny thing is that it's messed up. You know what? From a religious standpoint, the only thing you can do is one thing. If you did it truly, you would be in serious trouble. I'm not talking about murder. Murder is forgivable by God, in my opinion. It's called denying the Holy Ghost. You can ask me what that means, and the funny thing is, I don't even fully know what that means, because you have to be in a position where it's almost like you've had visions from God, or you have to know, you have to know, like you have to have experience after experience after deep experience of God's reality. He really exists, and you have to, really have had some undeniably, profoundly, heavenly visions, and you've had to work with the Lord very closely in some capacity to be considered a son of perdition, we call it, someone who denies the Holy Ghost. So you have to have experiences, you have to deny that they happened. So you have to be very, very close to the Lord, and then you have to deny Him, or you have to go the totally opposite direction from where you have been. It's assumed that if you've been an apostle or prophet, that if you went the opposite direction, that you'd be a son of perdition. But that's not always. It could be somebody who's not even in that position. But it's just a question of what your experiences have been in your life. And a lot of spiritual things are just, when it comes to the eternal judgments of God, we don't always know. If we did know 100%, I know a lot of us would feel a lot more content with things in an eternal perspective, but there's the whole point of this life. Well, we often have to act without knowing for sure what's going to happen. We just have to do the best we can. But that's the only act that I've ever heard of that's unforgivable. And it's, of course, in the scriptures, but it's not really elaborated on very much. So it's often assumed that Judas Iscariot, right? Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus, that he was a son of perdition because he betrayed him. We think so, but we don't know 100% that was the case, but we would assume so. That's ultimately God. But anyway, getting away from that whole thing for just a sec here, in a way, isn't it true that we often, just in a social context, we completely push away people? Some people do that more than other people. I hate doing that myself, unless someone's a real scumbag. but it's always temporary. At some point, whether it's in 100 years or 1,000 years in the afterlife or 10,000 years, at some point you're going to come across a person that you didn't like at all, or whatever, some other person that you had some kind of falling out from. You're going to come across them again, and you're going to have to tell them why you ignore them. Or you don't. They probably will understand. They'll probably apologize to you. But however it's going to work out, things will work out at some point. It's just that some people can be so unbelievably judgmental. And some people are not. And it's great when you can meet people that are not judgmental. At the same time, we all need to be good people as it is, so we're not taking advantage of people that are not judgmental, right? Yeah. So, maybe a few other things about this video. Um, I just, I hate it when you have a clear day or you have a pretty uncluttered, more carefree week coming up. And then you get all these phone calls, you get all these emails, things you need to respond to. And then other things come up that make you busier all of a sudden. You have to change your plans. It's very annoying, but folks, I deal with this every single week, almost every single day. You almost have to be on vacation for this not to be a thing. And honestly, there are people on vacation that just because of the nature of their work, they have to keep answering emails, answering their phone. I get it. I understand. Anyway, so in summary, by the way, I was a little bit more to the point what I'm talking about with moving to the USA versus Europe versus other places, because maybe I don't know. There's other areas of the world that have very good living standards, like Australia, New Zealand, and Japan and South Korea. Kind of. It's just that these more developed areas of the world will have downsides to them as well. I've often thought, what's the perfect country? Is it Norway, right? Is it Denmark? Is it Iceland? I don't think it's Sweden. Sweden's a great place, kind of. Is it Finland? Was it Scandinavia in general? Is it Switzerland? Is it Canada? Is it where is it? Is it Ireland? Right? Are people just really happy-go-lucky in Ireland and just find a pot of gold? Right? Sorry, the Irish out there are gonna kill me. So I don't know. But these places seem very appealing for everybody, a lot of people. But it's like, but there's probably going to be some kind of something that makes them not quite whatever. And I've often wanted there to be more like a heaven on earth type place, by the way. Some people believe actually that's Utah amongst members of my church. I know, yes, Zion type of thing. But yeah, I've also, it's also very clear that then you get some people that are a little bit full of themselves at times, in a way, in Utah. It's just talking about here's Zion kind of thing. I've never really cared for that whole thing. But there's a lot of very good people that are not too, self-righteous that way. But that's just Utah. But you could say if you lived in Utah, you've been in Utah, you could say Utah's a great place. It really is. If you want to know, just be around a lot of people that don't smoke or drink. No smoking, no drinking, no funny business. And that can be very nice in Idaho and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You guys let me know if you really like certain countries, and stuff. Anyway, I also, before I'm done with this video, I have to give a shout out to one of my new YouTube friends, Marco Luca in Italy. You're just amazing guy, buddy. You just keep being an awesome dude. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.